those changes are going to be awkward at first. Because when it's something that you haven't been doing and you just come home and say, we're going to do this, it's going to be awkward at first. But what we have to do, and I'll say for me, what I have learned to do is create a safe space for me to give her my heart. Boy, if a woman give you her heart and truly give you her heart and you create that safe space, she'll move a mountain for you. Yeah.
That comes down to consistency.
Right.
While you're evolving, maybe you need me to be consistent, something that is anchored, not changing, and you have to be able to allow your woman to evolve. And like I said, communicate with her. What do you need me to be? You need me to be consistent. I'll be a ground for you to stand on.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, I think it's twofold. The nuance of the question is, if you're talking about from the woman's point of view, part of it is communication. Because see, what happens, in my experience, and I'm sitting here as a divorced man, you can sometimes hold a woman hostage to who you want her to be or who she used to be.
Yeah.
And as a result, you're demanding her to be who she was yesterday, but she's different today. So part of it is a requirement, I believe, of her maybe communicating, hey, I just got back from Woman Evolved. There's some things going on in me. I'm in transition. Yeah. And then as a man, the challenge that we face is to appreciate and create room, as David said, for space for the woman that we're with to reintroduce themselves to us. And for us to be able to appreciate and fall in love with that woman. And I can say that from having not always done that perfectly.
Let me jump in just for a second. I just want to say this. The core is what stays the same. Everything else changes about fruit. It blossoms, it becomes fruit, it withers. The one consistency is the core. And the great power that you have is to choose somebody whose core lines up with yours. Their core values, who you are as a person. Are you loyal? Will you fight for me? Will you stand by me? We want the same things. I want you to fight for me. I don't want a woman that, no, because we got to fight this world together. We have to fight through life together. We have to fight through ownership, building a life, building people, building human beings together. I want you to be strong. I want you to be a warrior, but I don't want you to take your strength out on me. I don't want you to take your strength out on me, and I don't want to take my strength out on you, because we cannot win at a game where we are competitors. We have to be collaborative in order to win at the game. So it's not about competing with me. I can make more money than you. No, because all of that may change. I've seen different seasons. I'm probably the oldest guy up here. I've seen seasons. Things change. You can be popular today. You can be unpopular tomorrow. You can be employed today. You can be unemployed tomorrow. You can be a millionaire. You can be homeless next week. Don't build your hopes on things that change. Go with core value. Do you love me? Do you love God? Will you fight for me? Can we withstand an argument? Can we go through a disagreement and still have the core value where we were fussing. Yeah, we got mad. And yeah, you got on my nerves. Yeah, I think you're stupid. And yes, you disrespected me. Yes, you got to, yeah. Now, where we gonna go eat? That's relationship. That's relationship. If you get that, that's good. How you doing? What's going on with you? Are you okay? If you don't have that, you don't have the right person.
If your evolution is going to threaten me, then maybe we're not in the best situation. Honestly, you're evolving to better. So if that threatens our relationship, there's something wrong with our relationship.
Or there's something wrong with my past where you trigger me.
Insecure.
Because I'm insecure.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Because maybe my mother left me, and now you're changing on me, and now I'm reacting not because you did anything wrong, but it's a trigger for me because I've been just as traumatized as you have. I just expressed it differently. Some of the things that got on your nerves about me was my trauma.
Yeah.
So recognize male trauma shows up differently at the table.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, sir. No, just you. Go ahead.
Well, no, I want to talk about male trauma for a minute, because when we talk about women who are having deep conversations about their trauma, it's being exposed. We're having conversations about shame and resiliency and strength, and it does not appear that these types of conversations are happening and directed towards men. How do we, as women who are...
Hey guys, and welcome to Little Blackbird 91. We are talking to you guys about why relationships fail. This is episode, I think, episode 3 now. Talk about this. And we're talking about the fact that a man's greatest fear is a woman evolving and changing. Now, I know some of you are going to get, right down my neck. Some of you are going to be cussing. Some of you are going to say, we don't care what men feel like. And that's totally fair, right? But I want to have a real discussion. And I will open up the panel as well a little bit later. I want to start off by saying this. When I talk about one of the greatest fears for men of a woman evolving, I think I need to give you a little bit of a background to make you understand why this potentially takes place. When I talk about fear, I talk about the fact that emotionally, oftentimes men, when women evolve emotionally, men struggle to express that they feel fear due to the way that we've been reared and we've grown up. So oftentimes that expression of fear becomes anger, hostility, jealousy, selfishness, manipulation in those spaces, right? Instead of us actually being able to express how we actually feel. Because we have a very poor relationship, not all men, but some men have a very poor relationship with vulnerability and their experiences with vulnerability with parents, oftentimes with a mother or ex-girlfriend or whatever, and they've suffered in that area. They have learned through patriarchy, through media, through your mom and dad, through friends, through girlfriends, that actually being vulnerable does not pay off. That actually being open about how you actually feel doesn't actually give you the rewards that you're looking for. And so sometimes when we talk about the evolution of a woman, let me give you an example of what I mean by this. A wife gets a promotion. She now earns 30,000 more than she was earning before. It's very wild. It doesn't always happen, but it is what it is, right? She earns now 30,000 more. A man may be seen to look jealous. He's not happy for her. He feels like, in that moment, the woman may look at him and go, you're not celebrating me. You're selfish. You're all about you. And in reality, what is oftentimes happening, not in all cases, because some people really are mad, but what is happening sometimes in certain cases when the woman evolves, whether it's financially, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, whatever, is that the man feels a level of fear. And because we have not got the vocabulary, nor the experience or the resilience in that area when it comes to fear management and expression of emotions, what tends to happen is hostility, anger, jealousy, manipulation, dismissiveness of those moments, right? So when you're in a relationship, you fear, and instead of actually saying, hey, I'm feeling a little bit vulnerable here. I'm feeling a little bit, just combobulated a little bit at the moment. My mind is already taking me 3 or 4 steps ahead, and I'm already seeing something that I don't like. And here's what oftentimes men don't necessarily express all the way through as what they're seeing, but they might not like about the evolution of the woman. What they oftentimes are seeing is that them becoming a priority is being reduced. So over a period of time, they're looking at themselves going, okay, let's say she gets a job promotion. She earns so much more money now. But he's also looking at the fact that now your time is also going to reduce. And what happened because of men, how we've been reared as young boys, a lot of times our relationships become our focal point for love and loving us as who we are, not for what we do. That doesn't mean that that doesn't mean that we're vacant from what we do. We know that what we do gets us in the room too. But a lot of times as men, we look at our relationships as that woman will love me for who I am, not just what I do. Because the messaging that's been from young oftentimes is not about loving ourselves, but it's about being loved for what you do. For instance, let me give an example, right? Bar the most handsome men in the absolute world. When we start life, okay, and you start from young, you get a little bit older, right? Why do men want women? They want women simply because of their beauty that the person carries, right? They're good looking, they smell good, they make us laugh, whatever, right? And the messaging that's often come the other way around is, okay, well, the woman's not necessarily looking, again, we know women look for men that they find attractive, please, we know. But oftentimes what's really important to women is the security he's able to provide financially, and then emotionally, and then mentally, if you want to call it that, right? Of course, the world is changing now, so we're seeing things different. But oftentimes the value systems of both men and women are considerably different. And so we know that no one's coming to save us as men. And we know that, and I saw it in a video just the other day about 50-50. You're a man, we're expected to provide. That's what we're talking about. You're obligated to do something. And therefore we are understanding that our love is dependent upon what we do from birth. So when we get into a relationship, what we're really looking for is that woman to love us for who we actually are, not just for what we do. The problem is there's a gap Because between when we're a child and when we're adult, what messaging should be happening is the same thing that happens to women, which is love yourself. Learn to love yourself. Learn to express yourself. Learn to be one with your emotions and your thoughts and your ideas, right? But as men, we're not often trained in that particular way. It takes a healthy home and a healthy mother and father to really create an atmosphere where a man is in tune with how he feels about himself and how he feels about who he actually is. So what happens is, as men, we buy in to what the world says our value is as men. We buy into the idea that I have to produce something. So what will happen is a lot of men will put their value and their effort into making sure that externally they're good, whether it's their physique and their achievements and their goals. They will put all their energy and effort into those things because actually, in reality, we're actually rewarded for that. You ain't rewarded for your emotional intelligence. Can we be honest about that? Right? Now, of course, the world has slightly changed again. We're in the modern era. But let's be honest, you're not rewarded for your emotional intelligence. Find a broke man who's emotionally intelligent, and I'll show you women who don't want him still. Right? No, let's keep it a buck. Let's keep it real. I find me a man that's emotionally intelligent, but he broke, and I will show you that women still don't want to mess with him. They're not rewarded for being broke and emotionally intelligent. You're rewarded for being financially stable, okay? And then if you've got emotional intelligence, even better. That's how you're rewarded. And unfortunately, that is the way that life is reared. That is patriarchy that affects us negatively and positively at the same time as well for men. So I totally hear that. Yes, as men, we uphold patriarchy, so we're part of the problem. I totally hear that as well. And you're not wrong, right? I'm merely stating what's happening in the process of the situation, right? Whilst you're in it, I'm not intentionally trying to uphold patriarchy, but I'm going to uphold it. And so within that, I don't realize I'm doing that. But as I am doing that, I'm also suffering. And I don't realize that I'm a maker of my own suffering. It's just the reality of what it is. And so what happens is, as a man, you're going to focus more on the external things, because as a woman, when you're looking at the woman's going to invest in you, but she wants to see that you're stable financially. She wants to see that you've got some resources. Let me not even say money. Make sure you got resources to you, right? So if I got resources, and we know there's a lot of men out there who got money and are absolutely trash in character and absolutely trash in the way they behave, trash in their morals, and yet women will still choose them. You know why? Because money is more important. Not because women are gold diggers, but because women are attracted to stability when it comes to financial, because it's not just about money. Money is about resources and the ability to be free, to be able to do what you want to do. So it's not that women are gold diggers. It is that they're attracted to stability when it comes to financial. Now, don't get it twisted. I'm not going to lie to you and say that women don't ever look at character or morals. There's a lot of women out there who are looking for character, morals, and, money on an even plane. I'm not saying there aren't. What I'm saying, though, for instance, as a man, you're trying to achieve, because we're called to be hunters. We do go out and get. So one of the things that you're rewarded with is the baddest bees in the world. You can get away with money, have a bit of trash character. You can. There is no incentive to change that, because there are baddies and baddies and baddies and baddies all around the world. Okay? All right, who are going to enjoy you simply because you have money. Now, is that the right way to go? No, because if you really deep it as a man, if you were really in tune with your emotional self, if you're really in tune with what you need as a human being, and understanding that you're not dismissive of your emotions. So let me give you an example. One of the things that men might say is that men are more logical than women. And I partly would agree with that. But some of the logic that the men are talking about is not logic. It's dismissiveness of your emotion. Let me get my... Baby, I'm starting to sweat. Where my flannel at? I'm starting to sweat like I'm a pastor on the preaching pulpit. God damn. Hey, I'm getting hot, okay? But one of the things, one of the things that for men, when they start saying that they're more logical, I've encountered men who say they're more logical, and I've watched them, listen to them, and they're not more logical. What they are is dismissive, and that's completely different. You've heard me talk about it, attachment styles. A lot of men, oftentimes in the dating market field, are dismissive, and the women tend to be more anxious. What dismissive attachment style actually entails is that you separate emotions from past events, all right? So what happens is, a lot of times when men say they're making decisions, they actually dismiss the emotional aspect of a decision making, which is actually erroneous to do, okay? All right, which is erroneous to do. So in reality, when it comes to relationships and comes to how men might think, some men will tell you they're very logical. They're not. They're dismissive. And that's why then when you get later on and you choose the baddie because all you've invested in is money and the baddie likes you and it's like a nice little loop and feedback cycle, that woman has trash character. And she has trash character because you don't invest and you don't find value in that area because that's not what you've been taught. So that's just an understanding, right? So when I talk about the fact that there is fear sometimes of the woman evolving, and when I go a little bit deeper, I will break this down even more. The fear is that oftentimes that when a woman evolves, when a woman grows, when a woman expands, he will no longer become the priority. Furthermore, if he feels like he's already not the priority, he's going to be further down the pecking order when it comes to priority. And here's the reality and here's the truth. As much as I understand where in women and men and how they are seen as young boys and young girls, one of the things that as men, like I said, going back to what I said, is we're not loved for who we are oftentimes. We're loved for what we can do. And so when you're in that relationship, you want that woman to fill that role that society didn't fill for you, right? So when you're not loved for who you are, you enter relationships hoping that that woman you're going to love is going to love you for who you are. So when she begins to expand and she begins to grow and she begins to change and things are getting more of her attention, what happens is as a man, you start to feel fear, which is covered up by jealousy, hostility, anger, frustration, because you are afraid because you're counting the steps ahead of you. As a man, we tend to think a couple of steps ahead, oftentimes, not all men, some men you don't think get a little bit, you know what I mean? But a lot of men think ahead and they're already seeing where it's going. And what they can see ahead of themselves is that I can see that as you expand, your priorities are going to shift and change. In fact, your energy for me is going to shift and change. One of the questions I asked myself was, why is it that women have a lot of stories about men cheating when they're pregnant? And women are like, these men are bastards. They're absolute trash. How can a man cheat on a woman when she's pregnant? And I really sat there and I thought about it and I said, I get why. I was like, yeah, it's kind of trash. And it is trash. I ain't gonna lie to you. Okay. But why is it that why is it that there are a lot of men out there that cheat while a woman is pregnant? One, because of trash character and trash moral code. Let's be honest. But the other aspect is this. They've already started counting ahead that they're no longer become the priority because you first have to be in tune with you emotionally so that you don't dismiss and make things logical. And so that you actually and also learn how to vocalize and be able to express how you feel. You see, the problem with that is emotional regulation. When we talk about express, understand, and process, and if a lot of men, I'm not condoning. You'll miss it again. I need you to listen. Don't get twisted with condoning. No one's condoning. Listen carefully because I want you to get the message. No one's condoning. I've already said it's bad character and bad moral compass. I'm explaining something. What I want you to understand is that a lot of these men, and I'm actually coming at the men for this, is that because you have not been in tune with your emotions, because you've not been in tune with you being able to understand, you need to express how you feel, because you're now separating fear and acting like fear doesn't exist and that you don't have fear and you're not able to be vulnerable, what happens is you cover it with anger, selfishness, hostility, jealousy, envy, all this kind of stuff, right? And one of the key things is selfishness. So what happens is when that woman then gets pregnant, what happens to some of these men is that they start counting ahead, going, okay, if she has a child now, I'm not going to be able to compete with the child. It's actually really selfish of me to compete with the child about needs. Well, okay, if I do have needs, we know that women are going to be territorial over that child and they're going to put effort, energy, and time into that child. But a lot of us are still stuck emotionally as children. You see what I'm saying to you? A lot of us as men are still stuck as children when it comes to emotional maturity. So what happens is we're fighting. We're actually fighting in that moment because we're like, I can see now, okay? I can see now that in that moment, what's going to happen is you're going to change your priorities. That child is going to become the priority and I won't be the priority, right? And so what happens is that inadvertently, by me not wanting to compete with a child, I'm like, in my head, I'm like, it's my child. How can I compete with my child? I'm not supposed to compete with my child. Right, I'm not. But I also realize now that I am competing in some shape or form for your attention. And if I'm still emotionally immature and I don't know how to express myself, I'm going to struggle to express how I actually feel in those moments. And then what also happens is, and you know, and this is no fault to any woman. It's just about understanding something. Is that even if they do get to a place of expressing that, hey, I need a bit more from you emotionally, the fear is she could turn around and say to you, but baby, I'm overworked. I got the kids. I'm doing this. And then what happens is we go, okay, you know what? Let me not overwhelm her. Or sometimes we are preempting. And what happens is we haven't even discussed that. We are preempting due to our past traumas that if we say to you, hey, I know you're having a kid, or I know the kid's coming into play, but I really do want to be able to, I need some loving right now. I need some care right now. Now, when have you ever heard a man say to you, I need some care, I need some loving right now? We often don't use that language because it sounds weak. We often don't use that language because it sounds weak. It sounds pitiful. It sounds like, you know, you're not strong. And so typically you will never hear a man, you know, I need more loving, I need more care. He go and say, I need more sex, because actually that's a cover up, right? The sex is part of it. Yeah, he does want more sex, but reality of the situation is not the sex, it's that he needs more attention. But men in the society are not allowed, or shall I say have been reared in a way that you're not allowed to say, I want more attention. So what do? You take it. Instead of expressing it and going through the pain of maybe potentially being rejected in a moment and not being understood, and actually pushing that message through and getting her to understand where you're coming from, a man will avoid trying to be rejected in that moment and looking like a fool and having to be vulnerable in that moment because he's afraid. And so you cover up that afraidness with other things. Oh yeah, I needed to, that girl made me feel like a king. She made me feel like she made me did it. And really truly, you just don't tell the truth. You were fearful. You were afraid, right? You were afraid of being able to express that you needed more from her. You were afraid of being able to express that I wanted more from you, and I was afraid of being rejected by you. So I didn't want to ask you. And instead, I went outside and did some absolute buffoonery and nonsense and potentially ruined the best thing that's ever happened to me, or ruined this good thing that's going on right now, ruined this relationship, right? And now I'm begging you and trying to flip it around, right? What am I, in a sense, saying? I'm saying that a lot of men are fearful, but they don't want to admit that they have these fears. A lot of men are insecure, but they don't want to admit they have these insecurities. Now, I'm going to say this first and foremost. It takes two to tango, right? I need to be open and vulnerable with you. And I also need that safe space from you as well to be able to have that conversation, right? But first and foremost, let me deal with the men. That her evolving, and I know my internet is bugging right now. I apologize, guys. My internet wants to bug on me on that. Okay, so let me just make sure I've got some of these things off. But yeah, no. So let me take this off as well. So it goes. Yeah. So in reality, a lot of gentlemen don't want to express those particular sentiments and those particular feelings, right? Let me just say this: that, for instance, when women grow and expand, this internet is moving very mad, which is weird. They're gonna get me to change it up to my microphone. Okay, all right, because this is crazy. This level of internet baddie is problematic. Hey, the sweat is run down my face top. Okay, so I might have to turn my camera off or just do it without the thing because it's bugging. I can't lie to you. Okay, all right, cool. So you might just I think it's coming back now. Cool. So what I was saying is, in a sense, and I'm sweating like a madman. But yeah, no, the reality of the situation here, right? What I see with these situations is, for instance, let's say a woman now expands, she gets a job, she's evolving, she's growing, she's learning, she's moving in a different way. One of the big fears as well for men is that the struggle is that, because your value is oftentimes tied into what you produce, when the woman starts to produce a lot as well, and the woman starting to produce in mass, right? Whether it's resources, finances, whether she's getting connects, networks, and all this kind of stuff, you can see her expanding and growing and going fast. Sometimes for men, especially men who are not in their purpose, this is a scary proposition. For the men that are not in their purpose, this can be a very scary, scary, scary proposition, because what you're looking at is now, if she expands too much, there will be no need for me. Because you, as a man, and myself as a man, what is tough is that we have put so much value on producing that if now when I produce, it doesn't really matter, what's the need for me? Do you get what I'm saying to you? In your head, you're thinking, what's the need for me? If now she's able to expand that way, she's mentally growing, she's emotionally growing, all these things, and she's going way past you, right? What's happening to you is, as a man, sometimes you're thinking is, then she won't need me. So what happens when you're fearful? When you're afraid that somebody might not need you, what do you start to do? You start to manipulate. You start to control, all out of what? Fear. Right? All out of fear. Hence why, as men, we do need to find purpose, because purpose is not inbuilt to the opposite sex. Because, again, a lot of men, because of the way we're socialized in society, women are often socialized, quote unquote, or the way we promote and the way we dispatch messages about women is that women are emotional beings. And so what happens is, the emotional lack that we have as men, sometimes what will happen is that men will expect the woman to make up that lack. Well, you know what? If I'm providing, you make up the lack in the emotional aspect. But the reality is, nobody can make up for what emotional things you lack. You actually can't. That person cannot emote for you. They can emote to you, but they cannot emote for you. And so what happens is, because we have an idea of women that they are emotional beings, and we put a lot more load on them emotionally to take care of us emotionally, because again, we haven't oftentimes been loved for who we are, and we haven't done the work outside of that to heal in that area, to love ourselves. To love ourselves for who we actually are. And so because we buy into what the world is saying about us, which is what we do, we put so much of a load on a woman to be able to emotionally now begin to help us and cater to us. So now what's going to happen is, if you're going to start expanding, I now know emotionally you're not going to be able to take care of me. Or at least what I was experiencing previously as you emoting, as you emotionally investing in me, I'm now realizing I'm counting the steps ahead. I'm thinking about it. Okay, that, oh, actually, you might not need me. You know what I'm saying to you? You might not need me. And if you don't need me also, then I'm not going to get my supply. Do you know what I'm saying to you? I'm not going to get what I need from you either. Okay, so there's also that aspect. That's what makes it so heavy. In some aspects when we're coming from this. So there is an aspect of healing that as men we need to do, right? It's not all men. There is a lot of great men out there, emotionally mature and etc. I'm just saying, as a general consensus, there's a lot of healing as men we need to do, and there's a lot of healing to learn how to emotionally regulate, but also as well to express ourselves as well. And so that plays a huge part in the way that we sometimes we have fear in certain situations. Right? That's why the fear of your expansion can be very difficult, because now we're trying to control, whether it's through manipulation, dismissiveness, or whatever we use in that moment, rather than just being happy and be like, yes, babe, keep going. You know, I want to see you keep on winning. Right? Because our mind is already thinking about, if she does X, Y, and Z, she's going to have to be 10 days out of the house or 10 hours out of the house. And now what's going to happen is, oh my God, okay, 10 times out of the house, that means now that I'm not going to see you, I'm not going to come home and see you, I'm not going to be without you, your mind starts thinking. Okay, so that's another thing. I think also as well, I think as men, we're so used to suffering silently that when these situations change, we're so used to silently suffering when it comes to emotional aspects, because we're trying to be stoic. We've been told that be stoic, and when you're a stoic man and you can't share everything, you can't cry, you pent up so much of that frustration and hurt inside of you that it usually spills over in these kind of moments. So moments where you should be celebrating, enjoying, and winning, now you're spilling over your frustrations and hurt in those moments, and in the most inappropriate manner, that now it causes tears and cuts in the relationship that people people don't want to acknowledge, and then you're hurting your partner in such a way that for them, they now feel like they've been let down. They now feel like, wait, do I not have a partner that's in my corner? Do I not have a man that's supporting me? Do I not have a man that wants me to win? Okay, so a lot of that situation does happen for a lot of men as well, right? And their thought process. So that was also aspects as well. So where now becomes priority. I think I've got the points. Okay. I think also a more darker perspective, I don't think it's every man at all. It's a more darker perspective. There's an air or hint of misogyny in the air as well, right? Because when it comes to sometimes a woman being smarter, faster, quicker, you have an air of privilege. You feel like as a man, you should be that faster, quicker, smarter person. And when a woman does become quicker, smarter, faster, you chose her because she wasn't quicker, faster, smarter than you. And so in some respects, playing into misogyny, but also playing into hypergamy, you're afraid that if she expands, she's going to want someone bigger. And if you're not bigger, then that means now that she's going to look for somebody else. There's that fear as well, right? The fear of abandonment, the fear of being left behind, as well. So that also plays a part in in some aspects, not all, in some. Okay. So it takes a lot for us as men to rewrite how we value ourselves. And because if we're not emotionally in tune, it's going to be very difficult to accept this concept, because all you're going to hear is the quote unquote, i.e. the logic of the situation. But nobody makes decisions without emotions. There is no such thing. When you market a product to somebody, you emotionally market a product, right? There is no such thing as anybody doing a decision without emotion. It's a life in the pit of hell. Every man and every woman makes decisions based on emotions as well as logic. So when you go to buy a car, what you don't realize is that car, the reason why you like it, because it makes you feel like something. So you have to invest in emotion. So when you pretend as if the emotions don't matter and they're not real, what happens is you start to miss out on certain aspects of your relationship too. Someone said menopause. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Yeah. So this is me explaining the fact that, and let me be honest with you, I was one of those guys, and I'm always trying to heal from those spaces, because a lot of times as well, a lot of these thoughts that come into our heads, they are coming from an insecure place. But that's why you have an insecure attachment style. And it's not just men, women too, but we're dealing with men today only. There's an insecure attachment style to something. You know what I'm saying to you, right? So whether you're avoidant or whether you're fearful avoidant or whether you're anxious attached, they are all insecure attachment styles. So there's aspects of us that needs to grow and that needs to heal and that needs to do better in order so that we can relate to the relationship in a better way. So let me reiterate what I've just said in the last half. Now, one of the greatest fears for a lot of men when it comes to women evolving is that they're afraid of the emotional aspect and their emotional needs being removed or being or their needs being deprioritized, and that they going down lower down the pecking order as to why they're not going to be seen or heard or understood or appreciated or taken care of. They now feel like their priority, them being a priority, is going to reduce. But I want to just state this thing as well. As a man, learn how to emotionally regulate, which is making sure that first and foremost, you learn how to process, understand, and express. Learning healthy forms of expression of how to say how you feel. It's not just to say it anyhow. It's got to be received by the owner in a way that they can understand, process, and move with it. So learn how to express yourself without it becoming a weapon against the other person. You want to do that because they want to be, you want them to receive the message you're saying, and you want them to understand, and you want to be understood. So it's important, right? So that's a major thing there as well. But I know, you know, I know, you know, you guys have different thoughts and opinions. I would love to get your opinions on this. You know, I'd love to have your opinion on this as well. You know, so this is aspects as well. Okay. So let me put this in. So have your say in the chat, so you can say your piece. I'll put it in the chat for you. If you want to have your say, we'd love to hear your thoughts. You know, and love to hear your perspective and what you have as a thought process. Because I know there is different thoughts, and people see things differently. You know, and you may have a different opinion to all of us. So as Elson said, some of us work. Hey, listen, if some of you work, that's fantastic. I love that. I want you to continue working. I don't want anyone not to work. But I would love to hear your opinions as well, guys, or ladies, into what you feel about the situation, you know, and how you see it from your perspective. Because I think, you know, it's an interesting thing. I think also just give it a personal aspect as well. I think having to grow up myself emotionally and learn how to actually emotionally regulate myself has taught me a lot, right? Has taught me a lot more about how I should behave in a relationship. I think learning how to learning to heal has also changed my position in a relationship, right? So let me say, you know, let me say that for me personally, one of the things that I've struggled with was being vulnerable. And I struggled to be able to express myself. And what the partner that I was with at the time, when I was struggling to express myself, I was almost hoping that it would ask me questions that a therapist would ask. Now, some of you guys have got that great skill as well, like myself, who can ask really good questions. But I was with somebody who necessarily wasn't going to ask those kind of questions. And what that put me in a space of is that now I was in a place of always trying to receive rather than giving. And so I was always trying to fight the other person because I wanted to be able to receive rather than give. I couldn't be in a given space because I wasn't healed enough to give. I was in a space of being able to receive. And when I say about I couldn't give, that doesn't mean I couldn't help the other person. That doesn't mean I didn't listen to a person. That doesn't mean I didn't counsel even the person, quote unquote, in the relationship. I did. But what I was also not doing or not allowing myself to be was vulnerable in my own space, right? So you wouldn't know about me. And so one of the things that maybe I've heard quite a few women say to me is, you know a lot about me, but I don't know a lot about you. And that's just, again, part of, you know, that's just part of, you know, that's a part of, I guess, the ideas when it comes to dismissive avoidant attachment style. And so then when you see it that way, and you start to heal, you start to realize I was in the wrong position in that relationship. And I needed to be in a better position, a better healed position, a less insecure position to be able to give emotionally, mentally, etc., right? I wanted her to be in a place where she could not mother me, but I wanted her to tend to my wounds. And in reality, I needed to tend to my own wounds and actually begin to dress those wounds up before coming into the relationship. I was already beat up emotionally. I was already beat up so emotionally that when I got to her, I'm not going to be able to give you what you need. So I'm in the wrong position. And I think a lot of times men enter that space. So imagine that I'm in the wrong position emotionally and I have money, right? Imagine that. Imagine you're somebody who's in the wrong position, but you have money. So what's the point of working on yourself? There's no point working on yourself because in reality, the money that I get, I've achieved something and I get plaudits from both men and women. Explain how men see their own maturity, why a lot of men resistant to growth and resistant to engaging with what is needed to progress in life, because there's no reward for it. There's seemingly no reward for it. The reward of being financially stable okay, and a semi-decent human being will get you what you want in life, right? And also probably you taking up so much space, other people have accommodated you for so long. So why change it, right? There's no point for a lot of these gentlemen. There's no point changing. There's no point actually maturing because there is no benefit. There is no reward, right? There's none. And so what happens is there will always be sexy women who want a life with you, who will give you legacy of children, who will support you. There'll be them celebrating you because you've got money so much as well. And they're going to be like, yes, brother, you're doing your thing. You're rising and climbing. You've done your thing. There is no benefit, right? Okay, yeah, you might have even got married and your marriage failed. But yeah, there's about 4 or 5 other women who want you. What is the point, right? What's the point? I can get another one of you. And so you're not given any incentive to actually change that aspect until your life starts to fall apart. Friends start leaving you, family don't want to be around you, even women that are around you now don't want to be around you. When it gets to that point, that's when people get into crisis mode. And they've got 2 choices: while out and probably nuke people around them, or they go, I need to fix up, I need to change something. Okay. So for those men, they're not going to change because there's no reward system for them to be able to change. For those who are already preconceived with those ideas, they don't mind changing because it's preconceived idea already that I need to be better. I need to look for these things, right? So yeah, it's that's what I would say about that, Okay, let me get So and Jeff on the first. Yes, Jeff, talk to me, and then I'm gonna get So.
I want to hear what So has to say first.
Cool. No worries. So go for it, baby.
Hello, gentlemen. Hello, everybody. This is my first time calling on. So my thing is, a man who's fearful of a woman evolving is a man who doesn't have purpose for himself. That's the bottom line. That's the foundation that I see. So if anything, sometimes when those who are in that fearful space, I notice that they might even tend to sabotage that woman's progress. And what is the purpose of that? If you're in a king mindset, that's not kingship, basically. So it's best that a woman evolves. A man who is confident and secure within himself would be proud if his woman evolves. Like attracts like. That's my view.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jeff, go for it.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I was just literally thinking about everything you said, Coach. And you're right. I think there's definitely a lot of fear that men may feel towards women evolving, which is stupid, but I get it. I actually get it. I mean, obviously, as Christians, we believe that God hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and of a sound mind. But a lot of times, our understanding of power is based upon the tangibles, because when you have money and when you have status, when you're financially stable, you tend not to worry about these things. But if you are in a place of lack and your idea of who you are as a person is tied to what you do, and you lack these things, if you get with a woman who has more than you, you start to project your fear onto the woman, either through lashing out by ad hominem attacks, putting a woman down who is trying to evolve and be better, but you're not seeing it from a healthy perspective that this is a season to evolve. And maybe there are areas where you also have to evolve too. I mean, I've seen from family members where a lot of times there is resentment when one person is doing better than them. They're not looking from within to say, you know what, maybe I got to be doing better too. Maybe I have to encourage this person. They're in a different stage of life. They're not self-reflective enough to understand that, yo, I'm allowing so much of my fears, thinking as to the worst case scenario. What if this person leaves me? Sometimes men preemptively think ahead that if this woman is making more and more and more, an example, imagine if a woman gets a promotion and she decides to maybe move to a different country because that's where her post is at. It will further her career. The man is like, well, she's not going to have enough time for me as we used to, because now the responsibilities have changed. Especially when kids come into the mix, even though the man may use the kids as an excuse, when really he's sugarcoating it and hiding around the fact that, no, you're not going to have enough time for me. Men can be selfish in that kind of way. And I'm not saying that men should not verbalize their frustrations, but a lot of times, because men, we see ourselves as protectors, and we have an idea as to what we want our relationship to look like. And if anything messes up our paradigm and we don't know how to properly deal with it, we take it out on our significant other. So a lot of times it is toxic. It is shown through maybe manipulation. And if we have never been in a place where we can say, you know what, I need to be honest about how I feel, we may take it out in the wrong ways, even going as far as, you know what, we turn to like vices such as maybe drinking, or to calm ourselves down, because now we don't know how to cope with this. I've seen it. I've seen it from family members. I would also say that I think another verse in the Bible that says, bear one another's burdens. But what do you now do when you as a man are meant to take the load in the relationship? You're supposed to make another person's load a little bit lighter. But let's say your woman is making more money than you. If you have insecurities and you think, oh, she's going to make more money than me, so now whoever has more money in some sense has more power, has more access, has more opportunities, and then has the final say and veto. That's how a man may think, because, oh, she can do a lot more with her money and she may not even need my advice or my thought process in this. All of this does stem from a lot of fear, and I think it's because there are men that don't do the emotional work on themselves. They don't take time to focus on character development. They think, oh, let me focus on getting the money and all of that character comes after. No, it's a simultaneous thing. You have to have a balance where you are willing to learn how to emote. But that also comes from maybe upbringing. If you were never taught, or you've never learned how to properly emote and express your emotions, and actually really be honest with yourself and not hide behind this fake stoicism where you want to be seen as strong, you will actually emote, but just in a different way. And I think you said something about us men leaning towards logic. I think we base so much of our idea on logic as truth. It's not, because men can have faulty logic. All logic is just your reasoning of things. The same way women can have faulty emotions is the same way men can have faulty logic or understanding of the world. So I think we have to change our mindset to think that, yeah, you can have your logic, but if you're dismissive about your own feelings, well, that's just simply a feedback loop in which you're playing into. That's all I've got to say about that.
Yeah. And there's also a good point here that's made by Last Name First. Again, it's not all men, but you know, she said men have been taught that we're given an assignment from God, which I was saying about the privilege. And it's not all men, but the privilege. And so we're taught, given an assignment from God to dominate women. They were better, smarter, and more equipped than women. Usefulness is serving men. So women seemingly best in hurts. Absolutely. And I'll tell you, it's not every man, but I'll tell you myself, I had the exact same thoughts. Can't lie to you. Absolutely. I remember a distinct moment when I was young, probably like 17. I know the exact time, so I was 17. And I remember the time, and I think I've said this before, well, me and a girl were playing Scrabble, and I had a lot of value in my intelligence. I'm more intelligent than her. She can't best me. Blood, she beat me black and blue on that Scrabble table, blood. And I remember sitting there, and she's like, "Are you good?" I said, I'm good. I was pissed. I was like, how the f did she beat me? How can she beat me? That's what's about misogyny sometimes as well, too, right? Also plays in patriarchy and all that stuff as well, right? And that's how did she best me? Because all I could hear in my head was, you're meant to be better. you're meant to be faster, stronger, better. You're meant to be smarter. So how the hell does she best you? So I know for sure what Last Name was saying was absolutely true. It's not for every man. I don't think every man has those thoughts. But there's a lot of men who do. And that contributes to, and that comes from an insecure place, like I said. And that comes from an insecure aspect of you as an individual, you know, where you, and again, I guess obviously, and I love the religious aspect too, you know, oftentimes you see the men in charge, men in power, and also because as well, if you've also been, if you have to look at relationships that have a very authoritarian dynamics in a relationship. So father to son, right? You're dominated. You're not fathered sometimes, you're dominated. And because sometimes you're dominated, what happens is you expect to dominate when you go out there too. And so in that immediate aspects, when you then meet someone else, that mindset still can be present where you're like, I must dominate. And in reality, what actually happens is the opposite. You're not dominating. And it frustrates you because you think you're meant to be better. And I actually said this before, that that same thing that happens to men is what actually is the problem with white people when it comes to black people. It's the same disease. It's in the same family. That the reason why sometimes white people as a whole, not individual people, but as a whole, as a structure, as a system, find black people frustrating is because they've been told through media, through messaging through systems, structures, and schooling and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of messaging that white people are actually better than black people. So what happens is it stokes something in their spirit when a black person bests them, right? Bar it not being sports, they don't mind that, right? Because they, black people are, animalistic. But when it comes to things like business, when it comes to things like the arts and stuff like that, things that require a delicacy, quote unquote, cooking, all that kind of stuff, they get up in arms because they have been told from young that they are better than black people, inadvertently, or whether it's a covert or overt, right? And that's the same thing as men. We've been told that we are better than women, inadvertently, covertly, overtly. Do you know what I mean? So when you best us, we are feeling frustrated. And actually, that's what you're seeing in the incel community right now. Not all of them, but some of them are having that same frustration because they feel they should be better and that women should just submit and just be with them. But the reality of the situation is that they're not deeping that you're actually having the same disease that white folk are having with black folk. And so when they see for instance, I'm just dealing with black women specific because that's who we are. When they see, for instance, black women excelling, and again, the stats are still proving that men are still there. So we're not going to pretend that the men are not there. We are still winning that race. But the fact is, if we talk about a day-to-day and just talk about individualistically within our smaller communities and talking about the anecdotal aspect, when you see women, obviously black women then excelling, and yes, you're bought out the market because I guess when they grow, you have to expand yourself. There's a frustration there. And so the frustration is to cover up the actual fear. So that's what I said about when people are evolving, is that some of the rhetoric that they use doesn't make sense. Someone I'm looking at and I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Did you follow it all the way through? And I have to remind myself, no, they are fearful. So when you're fearful, you make a rhetoric up that may not make sense until someone prods and pokes at it, because that's your defense armor. And so the same with white folk and how they want to devalue black folk when we make it, the same things happen to Asian people. No offense to them, but they were crying and screaming about affirmative action. Now we ain't got no affirmative action. Guess where they are? In the same position we are, and now they're crying about it. You should keep your mouth shut. Now you're in the same position we are. Okay, you thought because you maybe a little bit closer to the whiteness, you would get away with it. You are in the same position that we are in. So now, a lot of times when people are in privilege, it's very hard for them to see another perspective because they've been privileged from young and they've been privileged from birth. And so you see things differently. So I do understand that point, as well. And that. Felicia, welcome to the conversation. Before you go, I'm going to let Soso go back in and then they jump. How you doing, babe? You right?
I'm good. Okay.
Before you go, I'm going to let Soso jump in if you have anything to say.
Thank you. So in dialectical behavior therapy, there is an intervention of mindfulness that just comes to mind when they discuss the emotional mind versus the logical mind. And when we incorporate the DBT skills, we build the wise mind. And in this aspect here, where I feel the man, which most likely thinks from a logical perspective, and the woman who functions in the emotional perspective, I believe that when we come together, we form that wise space. That's the ultimate goal. That's where we should be striving for.
Oh, so don't go away now. You know, put yourself back on the mic.
Yes,
Continue what you were saying.
No. I mean, yeah.
Oh, no. We need to expand.
But that's ultimately, I believe, what the goal should be, is for man and woman to come together to form that wise space where we can counsel together. We can consult one another. There shouldn't be a competition. So, Kojo, I guess in that Scrabble example where you were talking about learning that you're not going to always win, that's just a lesson in humility. And remember, at 17, your prefrontal cortex hasn't been formed yet. So you don't have that sound judgment yet to make space for someone else, because obviously boys are trained and conditioned to be competitive, to be the best, to be number one, so it's within the nature that's the nature that you are operating out of. So ego, of course, was touched, but you learn and you grow from that.
Definitely was touched, and it wasn't an angel that touched me either. Felicia, go for it. Thank you, sister.
Kojo, you know how I feel about this conversation. In my own evolution and raising my son, he's 15. I totally agree with what you're saying. I don't have as many followers as you, but I actually made a video about that. Remember, I said instead of men saying, be my peace, he's actually telling you to learn his cry, because it was a situation with my son. He's in high school now, and he doesn't really like to tell me everything that's going on just because he's going through the changes. But I knew by his demeanor and by his countenance that something was wrong. And it was nothing words could be expressed to me from his mouth. Just as a mother, intuitively, I knew that. And so it hit me like a brick. And I was like, this is what men mean by be my peace. They want us, not saying, ladies, that we should coddle and be doormats. I'm not saying that, but when you really think about it, at its purest form, the only time that women really understood men was at birth. And so when they're told not to cry, even with an autistic child, when they can't use their words, what do? They throw things. They have to mum. They have to use sign language. So I think when I was saying, when men say be my peace, I believe what they're saying is learn my cry intuitively, because that was the purest form that we knew them at birth. So no, we shouldn't allow men to disrespect us or anything like that, because some men can use that to their advantage. But I agree with you, Kojo. It's learning. The cry is not so much a real cry, right? But it's us learning them as to say, hey, you're important. Like I wanted my son to know, hey, I see you, because I knew he really wanted me to kind of probe him and ask him what was going on. And I think that, I think you said this before, some men haven't outgrown, they stopped growing where they got hurt. Can I say it? So like at 15 and 16, if something happened to them, maybe they're still acting like when they were in high school and they were going through the changes and they didn't feel comfortable. I agree with that too, Kojo. I totally agree with what you're saying. And then the second thing I was going to say is, I mentioned this in one of my lives, is that Ruth and Boaz carries a spirit. I don't care what nobody say. The spiritual community has wrecked us with that Ruth and Boaz story, because when you really read that story, you realize that Ruth was in survival mode. Can we just be honest? She was probed by Naomi to survive by going to Boaz. However, Boaz was not off the hook, because Boaz led with resources. The Bible says that he left things in the field to be seen. And the reason why I say it's the spirit on that story is because we've been taught Ruth and Boaz, but now we're living in a generation of products of Ruth and Boaz. Ruth was in survival. She moved to a land with her mother-in-law because they fled a land that they couldn't survive in. When she got there, let's be honest, in modern days, she was working overtime. The Bible says that she stayed in the field for him to even leave something. But he left it for her because he wanted to be looked at as a source. And then Naomi came and told her, hey, I said work babe, but it was like, hey, you see Boaz? Okay, let me teach you how to kind of manipulate and get what you want. She said, go in his room in the middle of the night, do X, Y. Nobody tells the full story in the aspect of like, that's a pure example of survival meets answer, right? But like Kojo was saying, if y'all give him a little bit of grace, we don't know how that story ended with Ruth and Boaz, right? Because who's not to say once she got the field, they didn't have problems in their issue. That's one. Two, could she even maintain what he had? And three, did Boaz feel as if when Ruth had to run the field that he didn't have time for her? You get what I'm saying? Like the spiritual community has to stop giving. I'm not gonna say folk tales because I believe in the Bible 1000%, but we have to choose stories that have conflict resolution and actually have some sort of relationship. What is it called, KJ? Some type of relationship structure, right? So I've been studying Abraham and Sarah. And I mentioned this, and when people only want to tell us the story about Abraham and Sarah when they're old and waiting for a baby, but that wasn't their whole relationship. They started off a little bit younger. God told them to leave where they was. They told Abraham, leave his father and go to a new city where I'm gonna take you. But before you leave, I'm gonna change your name. And in that, he changed their names. They moved to a new city in which they wanted a child. God told them, I promise you, I'm going to do it. Even told Sarah, laugh. They could not wait in God. So they were even in covenant to even disobey God for him to sleep with the handmaid. And the reason why I say this is so important because that's a relationship. Do you love somebody to where you're ready to, are you in covenant? And do you love somebody so much? And are you submitted to somebody where one, you want to see them happy regardless of whether it comes from you? And two, are you willing to stay in the relationship even knowing that you've made a decision that could compromise it? Because the Bible says that when Hagar and Sarah fell out, Abraham had to make a decision. Am I going to go with my wife or am I going to leave him in his house? And the Lord gave him permission to put her out. And what I'm trying to say in a roundabout way for people who don't know the Bible is that's conflict resolution. That's a real relationship. Abraham and Sarah came to the table as equals, but when God changed their name together, they went in purpose as such. The Bible says Sarah was so beautiful that Abraham never went anywhere without her, but he lied that was his wife because he was afraid that she was going to get killed. And so that's a relationship that should have been sold to us because Abraham even had to learn to submit to how beautiful she was. Am I making sense, Kojo? So I think this conversation is so needed in 2023. We need to break the stronghold of Ruth and Boaz and start picking up Abraham and Sarah. But nobody wants to read that because they think about Isaac and the sacrifice. But they didn't it just didn't start there. They started earlier on, but they had level playing field. Abraham brought something to the table that God favored. Sarah brought something to the table. But when you look at Ruth and Boaz, it's not true. The Bible says that she left a land because there was lack and that she went with her mother-in-law. And so I think that's what Kojo is essentially saying is that we have relationships that are in survival mode. And when you're out of survival mode, like I said, even for women now, you have these beautiful women, and I'll say Atlanta because women are really thriving there the most, who are getting divorced because if you always listen to their story, they had to struggle from the bottom. They met a man with resources, and what they do later on down the line, they get divorced. Why? Because some of these men will say, well, her work, let's look at Dr. Jackie. I think there's what's that? But Dr. Wise, what is it called? It's on Bravo. I watch it all the time with Quad and them. That show. What's the name of the show, y'all? It's with Quad and Dr. Jackie. It's not Dr. Wise. I can't think of it right now. But even with Dr. Jackie, Curtis, her husband Curtis, made it clear that she was putting her practice, married to medicine. Thank you, Z, was putting her practice before him, right? But before that, it had just started. She aspired just to be a OBGYN. And so what I'm saying, ladies, is that Kojo, he doesn't have children, no. But I think this morning I was so blessed because we always wonder, why do relationships fall apart after the kids? And it's because we don't learn how, as women, we haven't been taught, because not all women can have children, right? But we haven't been taught to balance, to not get out of survival mode. And when we get out of survival mode, what does balance look like? So I hope you guys don't stone him too bad. But, like I said, if nothing else, be open to what these men are saying, because as women, we have to understand that men are getting a different language that we do not have. And that's because healing looks different in 2023 than it did in 1996. You know, when Steve Harvey, the day he wrote that book, I read it, but I didn't pay it no mind. But when you're acting like a woman and you're thinking like a man, he wrote that book as if men were not healed. But let's be honest, people are getting resources to get healed. And so you can't act like a lady and think like a man anymore, because the man is not even thinking like the old man. Does that make sense? So, Coach, I ain't gonna stay on here for long. I'm gonna wait for you a little bit, but that's all I wanted to say. It's like, women, be open to this conversation, because it's giving us a lot of answers on where the healed men are now. Not the men that's trying to lead with resources, not the man that's in survival, not the man trying to be sovereignistic, but how a healed man wants to come to the table like Abraham and say, listen, I don't want to be wanted for my resources, but let's have a name change together. Let us be favored together, and let us learn how to balance this. And trust me that if we're in relationship and covenant, I got you. But I think that women, we don't rest in that, because and I think as African American women, like you saying, Coach Joe, we have a disadvantage. All we know is survival. All we know is making it happen. All we know is having a house. So it's hard to trust a man, especially a healed man, to say, I got you, when all we know is we gonna fall. Does that make sense? All we know is having to fall and pick ourselves back up. So that's what I wanted to say.
Listen, well spoken. I appreciate that. Thank you, Felicia. I know you're a woman of wisdom as always, so I appreciate you as well. Gabs, talk to me, man. Hey, Gabriella, are you there? Gabriella, are you there? Are you there? Are you there? Are you there? You have to unmute yourself, actually. I don't know if you're talking. Maybe you don't know you're muted. Okay, you're muted.
Oh.
Go for it, Gabriella.
Good evening. Literally, your point was so spot on. So I think what I have to say is a bit more of a different perspective. It's more of a point where, like, we've been conditioned from like young age that, oh, a man is like a child. And I'm coming from like an African background. That's the number one thing I've always heard, like, oh, men are like children, men are like children. I think that then gives men room to like not emotionally grow up. Like, it gives them room that, oh, a woman is always supposed to nurture me, look after me. I'm like the center of her life. Like, her life, all of her life is supposed to revolve around me because I'm like a child. Like, a lot of people always say like, oh, I have a man, but he's like a fifth child or my fourth child. And I think it now comes into play where women have been conditioned to always take care of men as if they're like children, and not give them room of holding them accountable, like not expecting so much from them emotionally. And men have also grown up to think that, yeah, I don't need to be emotionally mature in any aspect of my life, because I have that room to play off. I can throw a tantrum. If I'm not happy, I can be angry, or if I don't get the attention I need, I can manipulate, I can go around stuff just to make sure that everything still revolves around me. Sorry, my point is not very long. It's just because I've heard what everybody has to say, and I think like it's so true. You guys have got like several bases where like there's even the psychological side. I just thought that point didn't got made, where it's like, okay, if you're from a specific background, you also hear that you get programmed from a young age that men are like children. So it's like it always puts you in a place where you like don't expect so much emotionally from a man, and it becomes a burden later on when you actually start having children and you start expecting more from a man, and he's not in a place where he can give you more. And some of them are not even willing to learn how to give you more, because they said, okay, as long as I can provide financially, that's it, the rest can be put to the side. But that's all I had to say.
Appreciate it, Gabrielle. Thank you. Good points. Hey, listen, these are coming through. I'm liking the conversation, and I appreciate the honesty as well. It's good because we're growing and we're learning. You know what I'm saying? So thank you very much, Gabriella. Appreciate it. So you want to jump back in? Go for it.
I wasn't going to stay long. I just wanted to hop in on that topic conversation. So just wanted to share some viewpoints, and I look forward to joining future conversations as well.
Beautiful stuff. Thank you. So Jeff, last points, then we're gonna hop off.
Yeah, this is definitely a wholesome conversation that needs to be had. And even now, I'm even thinking, even for me as a man, I can't lie. Sometimes when I have entertained thoughts about, being in a relationship and protecting and providing, there's always, what if, let's say, my significant other makes more money than me? Why should I allow that to affect me? But then you hear other conversations that, oh, if a woman makes more money than you, she may potentially disrespect you because now she gets too big for her boots, and then she no longer sees you as the man. Therefore, you always have to make sure you're making as much money as possible, that you always have to be on top of her. You always have to assert the dominant role. But now, to me, I see dominance not as mastery of the other person, but mastery of self. So I think as men, we shouldn't be fearing a woman's evolution if it's towards our benefit as well as definitely hers. Because number one, I think it's also comparison as well. Sometimes, whether it's maybe due to an inferiority or superiority complex, if we base our understanding of happiness as the woman has to make me happy, the woman has to fulfill my emotional needs, not understanding that you have to do the self-work in order to be emotionally capable to take care of yourself in that aspect, rather than being codependent. Because how many times have you seen other relationships, even high key relationships like Will and Jada, for instance, where there's a level of codependency, whether it's Will towards Jada or Jada towards Will. When you make another human being your sole reason for existing, in a sense, you lose a bit of yourself. And I've noticed that in relationships, the vulnerabilities will always keep on popping back up again. If there are aspects of yourself where you've not done the work to be emotionally secure in yourself, it's going to manifest itself in different ways. So I think moving forward, in order for us to grow, we need to expand our understanding of, one, character development, and two, the concept of provision. And I don't think it's ever going to change necessarily in our time, because of patriarchy so ingrained into our psyches, the way our fathers have taught us, the way society has been set up, and even the expectations that are put on ourselves. But I think if we can get to a place of understanding that, yes, money is important, but money doesn't necessarily define me as a man, there's a lot more to it than that. I think we would make better headway in growing and being all-encompassing as men.
Thank you, Jeff. It's been a good conversation, and some of these topics are really important. I think as I'm talking to people and having conversations, I'm trying to bring them now to the platform as well. Because sometimes what I do is I have a lot of conversations, a lot of ideas come to my head, but I don't bring them to the platform. But there's a lot more conversation that we need to bring to the platform in terms of, especially from a male point of view, as to what's happening to us and what maybe potentially making our relationships fail or not work the way they need to work. So I'll keep on bringing these topics again. I'll definitely be on tomorrow. So I'll be on it tomorrow again, probably a little bit more early, actually. Probably will be in the morning time for the Americans, lunchtime for us in UK, just because I want to be able to get some things done. But it's been a good conversation. And thank you to the ladies, Felicia, So, Gabriella, who joined us. Thank you, Jeff, as well, for joining as well. It's good to have another man on the panel as well.
Thank you.
And I want to. That's right, baby. You're good. And it's good just to have more of these quality conversations, because it's not about blame, and it's not about trying to create a space of lambasting one particular agenda or the other. It's more about growth, and I'm learning to take my emotions out of the situation too. Sometimes it's hard. I hear the things that ladies are saying, and you're not even saying anything bad. You're not even cussing us or anything. But when you just feel like, damn, they really be getting, they really getting us like that. You know what I mean? But then I'm learning again to take my emotions out of the situation, just listen and really tap into what's being said, because there's growth in it, and there's wisdom in it. You know what I mean? And I'm really enjoying the conversations the last few days. So long that may that continue, and more growth, as well. So we're gonna continue that good conversation. I'm hoping my internet works out in the next few hours, because I don't know what's going on. Internet decided to play up all of a sudden. But anyway, it's been good, guys. It's in the Mazda fam. You can't even see, man. I appreciate y'all. Stay locked, stay loaded. Hopefully you enjoy this by listening. Don't be watching, because you ain't gonna see nothing. Okay, appreciate you lot. We'll see you again very soon. And let me leave you with my last little meme. I love this meme here. That's right. Sometimes life will have you here. Okay. But sometimes you